What is up, my last rifters? Today we are going to be working on a pretty simple tutorial. We're going to be making a random weapons box. So let's go ahead and just jump in and get started. So if you want to play with Verse, the first thing you're going to do, you're going to go to your project, go to Verse. Then you can go to Verse Explorer here. Then you can right click in your Verse Explorer and just add a new Verse file. We're just going to call this random weapons box. Cool. And we're just going to create it. We can just create and then we can just delete some of the code. So now we're going to open our project in VS Code right here, or whatever coding software you use. I prefer VS Code, but once we do that, we have our code here, our handy dandy code. This is a pre-made little thing where we are just going to keep the random box and delete everything else. We can actually keep the onBegin function because we're going to use it later, but let's go ahead and get started. So we want this random weapon box to be two things. We want it to be a weapon, which is an actual weapon that a player can have, and we want a display name for the weapon. So the first thing we're going to do is just create a class called weapon entry, which is going to be our objects in the weapon random box. And this display class, there's going to be two things in this class. So the first thing is going to be an editable. It's going to be a weapon, which is going to be a item granter device. This is what's actually going to give the player the weapon. We can just use this. We're going to set that equal to an item granter device. And we need our curly brackets will land there. And the second thing that's going to be in this weapon entry class is that's going to be an editable, so we can edit it in our visual editor. We're going to call this display name. It's going to be, we don't need two @ signs there. Excuse my dogs if you can hear them in the background. But yes, this is just going to be a variable called display name. And just, we're going to set that to a string, and we're going to just set it empty for now. We need to set this equal to empty. Great. Okay, so we just have two things in this weapon entry class. So let's go ahead and just create our weapon box class. This is actually going to be what's in our game, which is actually the weapons box. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an editable. When you create an editable, it just allows you to edit it via UEFN through our display here. We can add stuff, and we don't actually have to hard code the values. We can edit it through our editor, our UEFN editor. So we're just going to create an editable. We're going to call this our weapons entries. It's going to be a variable of weapons entries. Not entries. And that is going to be an array of these weapon entries that we just created. So we have our weapon entry class here, and we're just going to make this an array of those weapon entries. So we're going to have several weapon entries within this array. Why do we not like that? It's because we're missing type weapons. Oh, it's because I forgot to have my box here. So we gotta have the open brackets there, so we know that is an empty array. And then we're gonna have a conditional button. This is what's actually gonna trigger the box. And we actually don't need to make this a conditional button. For now, we can just use an actual button. So we're gonna use a var. We're gonna call it button variable. Call it button. Or we're gonna set that equal to a button device. Mistyping left and right here. We're just going to set it equal to a button device. Again, this is something we can edit with our visual editor. Cool. So now we have two things in our weapons class, in our random weapon box class. We have our entries, which is an array of these things, and then we have a button device. The next thing we're going to add is we're just going to add a editable billboard. And so we're just going to call this billboard. And this is going to be a billboard device. We're going to set that equal to a billboard device. There we go. Cool, yeah. And the last thing we need here is just a text for this billboard. So we can just call this billboard text. And this is important. We're going to set a localized tag here. That means that it will localize to a language. So wherever the player is playing from, it will localize to their local language. So we're just going to include this so non-English users can also use this system and understand it. It's going to localize the string. And we'll set that string to empty for now. Cool. So our class is made up. On again, we're just going to do a simple thing. Right now, we just have some print statements in there, which is the basic thing. The only thing we're going to do is we're going to have the button. And we're just going to have an activated event. So when this button is activated, we're going to subscribe to the press. So we're going to create a function called onPressed. When the button is activated, we're gonna listen and we're gonna call that onPressed function. So every time the we don't have an activated event. Okay, so let me look up the API for the buttons. Because it might be different. I'm used to using the conditional button, but the API calls, these are the functions that are used by Fortnite. So let's see what they have. We do have interactive with event. Okay, so we have an interactive with event. It's not going to be an activated event. It's going to be interactive with event. Okay. Okay, great. So when this is an error because we haven't written the onPressed function yet, but when the button is pressed, once there's an interaction event with the button, we're gonna trigger this onPressed function. Cool. And the only other thing we're gonna do is we want this to happen for everyone. So we're gonna get the play space here. And we are going to have a player added event. So this is every time a player joins, is going to subscribe to this. So when a player joins, we're going to subscribe to a function we're about to write. And that is going to be called setup new player. Cool. So we're getting the whole play space here. When a player is added, we're going to subscribe to a setup new player. This is just a fallback to make sure that no one's missing the subscription. So if you join late, you still will be able to activate the button. So let's just go ahead and write that setup new player function. So we're going to create a new function here. Should be on the same line as, same indentation as on begin. And it's just going to be called setup new player. So new function. So we are going to feed it an agent. And we're going to set that equal to agent. And then we're going to do our function here. So in our bot, we don't need that. I don't know why it did that. That's frustrating. So in our body here, all we're doing, and we're just going to say, we're going to do a conditional if statement that can fail. So we're going to set a new variable called FC. And we're just going to get the Fortnite character of our agent. I forgot an equal sign here. So what do we not have? Get for character? Okay, so see, we're missing the character tags here. So we need to go up to the top and just copy and paste this. Because this is not a default library that we're using. So we're going to go ahead and just add this to our imports. So using Fortnite.com/characters. So now we can use all their character stuff. And as you can see, that error went away. So the only thing we're going to do is we're going to just do the same thing. And we're just going to subscribe to onPressed for players who join late. So now if you join late, we get the play space. Anytime the player's added, we subscribe to the setup new player. The only thing that setup new player does the same thing that we did on the on begin. So even when players join late, they'll still be subscribed to have this button here actually work. Okay, great. Yeah, so onPressed is simple. We're just gonna use this because we're gonna want to put a sleep, which is just basically waiting in our main function. So on our onCrest function, all we're gonna do here is we're gonna feed in an agent, first of all, set it equal to an agent. And the only thing we're gonna do in our onCrest function equals is we're just gonna spawn our other function, because if a function suspends, you won't be able to call that directly. So you're gonna have to spawn that call. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna call another one called on button press. Cool. And we're gonna feed it an agent. We're getting an error because we haven't defined our on button press function, but that's all we're doing in our on press function. So now both these errors have gone away because we are subscribing to an actual function called onCrest. Well, we have an error here because it's subscribing to an on button press function, which is this. So let's go ahead and write our on button press function. And we'll also give that an agent, so that equal to agent. And we'll suspend here because we are going to sleep in this. So we're going to have the suspend tag here. And then we can just do void equals enter. Okay, so now we have our function. You can see we cleared out that action. This function is going to be pretty simple, right? So the first thing we're going to do is do a failsafe for if this actual array is empty. So we're going to just say if the weapons list, if the which we call weapons entries. So if the weapons entries length, if the length of the array of weapons entries, okay, if you capitalize inverse, if the length of the array of weapons entries equals 0, so there's no weapons in the weapons array, all we're gonna do is print a statement that just says, what should we say? No weapons aside. No weapons in array. Cool. So that's just our print, and then we'll just go ahead and return there. So if there's nothing in the weapons array, we're just going to print one statement that says, hey, there's nothing in the weapons array, we return. However, if there is something in the weapons array, what we're going to do is we're going to shuffle the weapons entries. So we're just going to set the weapons entries equal to shuffle weapons entries. So shuffle is we need another verse tag here, so we can just copy and paste that and add that to our imports. So all we're doing is we're mixing up the array, so we're putting it in a random order here. That's what the shuffle tag. That's what this shuffle function does. So we're just getting our existing weapon entry array and just shuffling the order of them. After we do shuffle them, we're just gonna say, so if this is a conditional statement that can fail, so we're just gonna create a new variable called selected, and that's gonna be of type weapon entry, and we're gonna set that equal to the first weapon entry. So after we shuffle this array of weapon entries, we're making our selected weapon entry the first weapon entry in our array of weapons, right? So after we do that, all we're gonna do is we're gonna set our billboard. I think we call it billboard, don't we? Yeah, we call it a billboard. I don't know why it's not coming up. We're gonna set the text for our billboard. This is a function that's on billboard, all the billboard device. We're gonna make, so it has to, you can see here, it wants a message, so we can't feed in the string directly. So instead, we're gonna use this handy function called string to message, which converts a string to a message, which is the type that we're looking for. And then we're gonna do, maybe I misspelled this. String to message. That's a function we need to write ourselves. That's a function that we need to do that just converts a string to a message. That's not a built-in function, so I apologize for that. But yes, we will do that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to set it the selected, which is our new variable, display name, which is one of our things in our weapon entry class. So cool. So we're gonna show that, and after we do that, we're just gonna get this selected weapon, which is the first parameter of our weapon entry class, which is an item granted device, and then we're gonna call the grant function of that, the grant item function of that of that item granted device, and we're gonna grant it to the agent. Cool. So all we're doing is we're getting the first, after we shuffle the weapon entries, we're gonna get the first weapon entry in the array. We're gonna set the billboard text to that name, and then we're gonna grant our player that weapon, right? We can have a print statement if we want here, just to make sure everything's going well. So we can just say grant random weapon granted. Print statements are log statements that you can read, so just to keep up with some debugging and make sure everything's going well. Then we're gonna sleep for a second, so we're just gonna take a small break. We're gonna set that to 3 seconds. Yeah, so we're gonna set that to 3 seconds, and then after we wait 3 seconds, we're just gonna set our billboard text. We're gonna hit the billboard again. We're gonna set the text to. We're gonna use the function that we're about to write called string to message. And we're gonna just set that random weapons box. So after we do grant the weapon and it says the name of the weapon, then we just reset it. Boom. Cool. There we go. That's all we need. That's our whole function. Now the only thing we can do is write this string to message function where we're gonna localize. But again, convert it to whatever language the player is playing in. Okay. And then we're going to feed it a string. Well, this is name string of type string. And all we're going to return is just a message. And so that message is going to be whatever the string is that we fed it. There we go. And that's our whole random weapon boxing process. So yeah, it's not too complicated. There's only really 1, 2, 3, 4 components of it, and then this array of weaponry. So we're gonna save that. Go back to our editor. We can go to verse, compile verse code. And then if we go to our content drawer here, we have a random weapon box. Put that in. Cool. And there we have our button. Let's go to Fortnite devices. There you go, button device. Button device. So right here. Cool. There we go. And then we're also gonna get because remember all the stuff we put in there. We put a billboard. We need a billboard, and then we need some weapons. So let's go in here, add a billboard device, and we're gonna put that. This is gonna be the text for our button. So we're just gonna make sure that this is relatively close to our button, so you can kind of see that. We're gonna put it above there. There we go. So we have a billboard, a button, and there we go. And then the only other thing we need is an item granter. Maybe a couple, because we're gonna make this a random weapon box. So we want a couple random items that they can get here. So we're gonna grab, let's just duplicate this a couple times. Boop, boop. Cool. So now we have 3 items. And yeah, you can set this as you like. We're gonna change the item list. We're gonna make this one. Let's rename this. Excuse me, I don't have a mouse right now, so we're doing this we can. We're gonna call this SMG Granter. We're gonna call this one. Oops. Rocket Granter. And we're gonna call this one Pistol Granter. Cool. If you do want to keep your naming, it's just the same, but this is just a simple tutorial, so it doesn't matter too much. So for our rocket granter, let's do that rocket launcher into it. The item list, let's make it item definition. We'll just set this to a rocket launcher. I don't want the anvil one because that just locks on to stuff. It's gonna be a rocket launcher. There we go. Pistol. Iron list, let's add you. Let's get a pistol. Nice. And then our SMG granter, we will also add an SMG here. So it could be any of these, that's fine. Cool. Now let's go add our random weapons box. So add our weapon entries. So we're gonna have 3 entries. So we have three granters. So the first one's gonna be pistol granter. Display name is gonna be pistol, because that's what we're granting. The second one is going to be a rocket granter. We're gonna say rockets. And the third one is going to be a SMG granter. We're gonna call it SMG. Cool. Save this whole thing. Nice, cool. And then we have to set our button to be our button and our billboard to be our billboard. Cool. So yeah, let's go ahead and launch this. You know I'm an OG because I got that Omega skin, of course. But look, here's our little Mappy skin. Let's see what happens when we press it. We got our sample text. Look, it says rocket up there. We have a rocket launcher. Cool. Press it again. Pistol. We have a pistol. Nice. And then it refers back to random weapon box. We press it again. It's another pistol. We know it is random. So it's not, you might do the same thing first. Random weapon box. Rockets. Here, our rocket launcher again. Nice pistol. Rockets. It is working properly. And that is how you make a random weapons box. The only other thing I would note is we probably want to take the billboard they have and just add that initial text here to the initial text that says sample sorry, just random weapons box, and it'll start by saying random weapons box as well. But there's how you make a random weapons box. I hope this tutorial was helpful. If you have an additional tutorial, please feel free to